There's a particular kind of stillness that only arrives after the dishes are done, the pillows are straightened, and the counters are wiped clean, and until that moment comes, your body simply refuses to sit down. Maybe you've felt this. The chair is right there. Rest is right there. And still, something in you says not yet. It isn't laziness that keeps you moving from room to room at 11 at night, folding towels no one asked you to fold. It isn't vanity that makes you notice the crumb on the floor before you notice the person talking to you. It's something quieter, older, and far more tender than either of those things, a nervous system that learned, somewhere along the way, that order is safety and disorder is danger dressed up as dust. You were not born needing everything in its place. No one is. Somewhere between childhood and now, a lesson got written into you, softly, invisibly, the way most important lessons are. That said, the world is easier to survive when it looks manageable. And a clean room looks manageable. A messy one does not. So your mind made a quiet trade. It traded spontaneity for structure. It traded ease for effort. And it called that trade peace because in a strange way it was. This is where psychology offers a word worth sitting with: a locus of control. It simply means how much power you feel you have over the things that happen to you. When life feels unpredictable, when the outside world keeps shifting under your feet, people instinctively reach for whatever they can control. Sometimes that's their schedule. Sometimes it's their body. And very often it's their space. Because you may not be able to control how someone spoke to you today or whether tomorrow brings good news or bad, but you can control whether the counter is wiped down. You can control whether the bed is made. It's not about the counter. It never was. It's about needing one small corner of your life to answer when you call it. There's a certain sacredness in that, actually. Not weakness, sacredness. Because what looks like an obsession with tidiness is often underneath a devotion to feeling okay. A person who cannot rest in mess is not shallow. They are someone whose body once learned, in ways they may not even remember, that chaos outside meant chaos was coming for them too. So the cleaning isn't about cleaning. The folding isn't about the laundry. It's a small, repeated ritual that whispers to the nervous system, "You are safe now, look, everything is where it should be." And this is where another idea gently enters: cognitive dissonance. It's the discomfort your mind feels when two things don't match, when what you see contradicts what you need to believe. If your inner world already feels tangled, if your thoughts are loud, your emotions layered, your worries stacked one on top of another, then a messy outer world becomes unbearable. Not because the mess itself is so terrible, but because it mirrors what's already happening inside you and you cannot stand to see it twice. So you clean the outside, hoping somewhere beneath conscious thought that the inside will follow. Sometimes it does, often only for a little while. Have you ever noticed how a clean space feels like a full exhale, even when nothing about your actual problems has changed? That's not an illusion, that's real. But it's also temporary, because the peace of a clean room borrows its calm from your environment instead of building it from within. It works. It just doesn't last the way you wish it would. There's a certain hum to a quiet, clean room, a specific kind of silence that isn't empty, it's earned. You know the one. Sunlight falling flat across a made bed. No noise except your own breathing. It feels like relief, but if you look closer, it's not relief from the world. It's relief from yourself, from the version of you that's still slightly on edge, still half listening for something to go wrong. A tidy room doesn't just look orderly, it sounds orderly to a mind that has spent too long listening for chaos. This is where attachment theory quietly walks into the conversation, even if it seems, at first, unrelated. Attachment theory is simply the study of how we learn to feel safe or unsafe through our earliest relationships. If love as a child sometimes felt unpredictable, warm one day, distant the next, calm one moment, tense the next, you may have unconsciously searched for something else to be predictable instead. Something that wouldn't change its mood without warning. Something that would stay exactly how you left it. A folded towel stays folded. A swept floor stays swept, at least for a while. Objects, unlike people, don't have moods. And so, without ever naming it, you may have quietly outsourced your need for stability onto your space. Because your space, unlike some of the people in your early life, never let you down without warning. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's intelligence and adaptation, not a flaw. Your mind found a way to create safety in an unpredictable world. It just happened to find that safety in the shape of a spotless kitchen instead of somewhere else. But here's a gentle truth worth pausing on: not disorder, it's information. Mess doesn't mean failure. It often just means you were living, actually living, instead of managing appearances. A cluttered desk can mean a mind deep in creation. Unfolded laundry can mean a day spent caring for someone else instead of yourself. Somewhere along the way, though, A lot of people absorb the idea that mess equals moral failure, that untidiness reflects on your worth as a person, rather than simply reflecting the fact that you're human, and humans leave traces of their living behind them. So when the sink is full and you can't relax, ask yourself gently, not judgmentally, what does this mess actually mean to me right now? Is it truly chaos? Or is it just evidence that you were present in your life instead of curating it? There's also a very physical layer to all of this, something happening beneath your thoughts entirely. When your environment feels chaotic, your body can slip into a subtle state of hypervigilance, a heightened alertness where your senses stay slightly sharpened, slightly braced, even if nothing dangerous is actually happening. Your shoulders creep toward your ears, your breath stays shallow and high in your chest. Cortisol, the stress hormone, rises slightly quietly without asking permission. And once the space is clean, once everything visually settles, your body reads that as a signal the danger has passed, you may soften now. This is why relaxing before cleaning can feel almost physically impossible. It isn't stubbornness. It's biology following the evidence in front of it. And there's dopamine in this story too, not the dramatic chemical high version people usually talk about, but the small, steady kind. The kind that rewards you the moment a task is completed, the moment the last dish goes into the cabinet, the moment the room finally matches the picture in your head. That tiny hit of dopamine isn't about pleasure exactly, it's about closure. Completion feels good to a brain that spends most of its day surrounded by things left unfinished, emails unanswered, conversations unresolved, decisions half-made. Cleaning gives your brain something rare, a finish line it can actually cross. Maybe this is the quiet reason you keep circling back to the same rooms, the same small tasks, even on days when you're exhausted. Not out of obligation. Out of a hunger for one clean, uncomplicated win in a day that otherwise refused to give you any. But let's slow down here, because there's a difference worth naming, not perfectionism, it's protection. Perfectionism sounds harsh when you say it out loud, like a character flaw, like vanity gone too far. But underneath most perfectionism is something much softer. A person trying to protect themselves from criticism, from chaos, from ever again feeling the specific helplessness of things falling apart around them without warning. When you need everything spotless before you can breathe, you're not chasing perfection for its own sake. You're chasing the feeling that nothing else can go wrong right now, just for tonight, just for this hour. There's also something worth noticing about what a clean space performs for the people around you, even if you never say it out loud. A tidy home can feel like proof that you have it together, proof that you're managing, proof that even if your inner world feels unsteady, your outer world tells a different, more reassuring story. Not control, it's performance. And performance, when it becomes constant, is exhausting. Because somewhere underneath the wiped counters and straightened cushions, a tired voice is asking to be allowed to just exist for a moment without needing to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. Have you ever kept cleaning long after the room already looked fine, unable to name exactly what you were still searching for? That search usually isn't about the room anymore at that point. It's about your own mind, still moving, still looking for the one small task that will finally let it stop. It helps sometimes to understand the emotional order in which all of this unfolds. First comes the discomfort, a subtle unease that something around you doesn't match how you want to feel. Then comes the urge to fix it quickly, almost automatically, because fixing feels safer than sitting with the discomfort itself. Then comes the cleaning, the folding, the wiping, the organizing, not glamorous work, but soothing work, work with visible, immediate results. And only after all of that comes the exhale. Not before, never before. Because your nervous system has learned, through repetition, that peace comes after order, not alongside it. This is why telling someone in this state to just relax rarely works. It's not that they're choosing not to, it's that their body hasn't yet received the signal it's waiting for. Rest for a mind wired this way isn't a decision. It's a consequence. There's a tender kind of grief hidden in all of this too, if you look closely enough, the quiet sadness of realizing that your calm has, for a long time, depended on something outside of you. On the room, on the schedule, on other people's approval of how put together you appear. And beneath that grief, if you keep looking, there's often a longing to one day be able to rest simply because you're tired, not because you've earned it through effort. To lie down not as a reward but as a right. That kind of rest, earned rest versus rest as a birthright, is worth sitting with for a moment. So much of what you were taught, directly or indirectly, suggested that comfort must be deserved. That you don't get to stop until the list is finished, until the space is spotless, until you've proven once again that you're capable and responsible and worthy of a pause. But rest was never supposed to be a prize at the end of a performance. Somewhere along the way, that idea got quietly planted in you, and it's been growing ever since, disguised as discipline. Not discipline, it's fear wearing a very tidy coat. And yet, here is the nuance. Here is where this deepens rather than simplifies. Needing order isn't inherently unhealthy. There's a real difference between someone who cleans because chaos genuinely unsettles their nervous system and someone who cannot function at all unless every object is precisely aligned. The first is a coping mechanism, imperfect but human. The second can tip into something closer to control, seeking its own comfort at the expense of everything else, including the people trying to live in that space with you. Most people live somewhere in between those 2 points, drifting closer to one side or the other depending on how much stress the week has already handed them. So maybe the real question isn't whether you should stop needing things clean before you rest. Maybe the real question is gentler than that. Can you notice why you need it without judging yourself for needing it at all? Because here's something quietly beautiful hidden inside all of this. Your desire for order is, in its own strange way, an act of self-care, even when it looks exhausting from the outside. It's your mind trying, in the only language it currently knows, to build you a small, safe world when the larger world refuses to hold still. Not obsession, it's devotion. Devotion to a version of peace you learned to create with your own hands, because somewhere back in your history, peace wasn't something anyone consistently handed to you. There's also a kind of intimacy in a clean space that people rarely talk about, not loneliness, it's intimacy. Because when everything around you is settled, you're finally alone with your own thoughts without distraction, without a visual reminder of everything unfinished pulling your attention away from yourself. A clean room doesn't just soothe your eyes. It clears a path back to you. Some people find that terrifying. Others find it quietly like coming home. Not withdrawal, it's a homecoming, the moment after the space is settled, when you finally sit down and your shoulders drop half an inch without you even telling them to. That drop is real. That's your body recognizing for a moment that the search is over, at least for tonight. Maybe you've noticed that on the nights your space feels chaotic, your thoughts feel louder too, more scattered, more anxious, harder to organize into anything coherent. That's not a coincidence. Your environment and your inner world are in constant, quiet conversation with each other, each one shaping the other more than most people realize. A cluttered space can amplify a cluttered mind. A settled space can, at least temporarily, borrow some of its stillness and lend it back to you. But it's worth remembering gently that the outer world can only ever lend you peace. It cannot manufacture it from nothing. If the anxiety underneath the need for cleanliness never gets acknowledged, the relief that comes after tidying will always be temporary, a loan rather than a gift, due back the moment life gets messy again, and life being life always eventually does. So maybe the deeper work isn't about the cleaning at all. Maybe it's about slowly teaching your nervous system that safety can exist without perfection, that you are allowed to sit in an imperfect room and still be, underneath it all, a whole and steady person. That worth was never something dust could take away from you, and peace was never something a spotless counter could fully give you either. It could only remind you briefly, borrowfully, what peace feels like, so that one day you might learn to access it without needing the reminder at all. There is nothing wrong with loving order. There is nothing wrong with needing your space to feel calm before your body agrees to feel calm too. But somewhere beneath the folded laundry and the wiped-down counters, there is a person who deserves rest not as a reward but simply because they are tired. And maybe someday on some ordinary evening the dishes will still be in the sink and you'll sit down anyway. And nothing terrible will happen at all. Just quiet, just you, just the soft, unfamiliar peace of finally being enough exactly as you are in a room that isn't perfect and was never really the point.